Red's off.
Okay, I call to order the April 18, 2023 Independence Charter Review Commission meeting. Ms. Gallman, would you please take roll?
Summer,
Present?
McDonald,
Here.
Casey,
Here.
Hub,
Here.
Latham,
Here.
Allender,
Here.
Frakes,
Here.
Steele,
Here.
Boatright.
Here.
So we have 2 people absent. We do have a quorum. We'll go to announcements. I have a few things I wanted to talk about.
You
First
skipped the
is,
minutes.
pardon me?
The next on the agenda is the approval of the minutes.
Approval, I skipped that, I'm sorry. Next on the agenda is approval of the April 6, 2023 minutes.
Motion to approve is submitted. Second.
Second, is there any discussion on that? Any comments, questions? Okay, all in favor of approval of the minutes, say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, thank you. Those are approved. Now, under announcements, today we are going to start our review on section 3.25. We ended on 3.22 at our last meeting. We are jumping over the Department of Health sections because we have 2 absences tonight, and those individuals wanted to be here during that discussion. We want to make sure everyone can be there. So we will go back to it at our next meeting. And so we'll start with 3.25. And for this meeting and the next few meetings, I would ask that you review the emails and the memos and letters that we've received from Mr. Cover and Mr. Walker, because they did have some comments about the sections coming up. Then today, hopefully we'll get to Article 4, but we will stop when we're at the end of that because we are not going to review Article 5, which is the ethics portion of the charter. We are waiting to get for the Mayor's Ethics Commission, I don't have that name correct, to make their report to the council. And I'll get to that in a second. They are not doing that until May 22nd.
Yes, ma'am, May 22nd.
At the council's May 22nd study session. So it may be a few meetings before we go back to Article 5. I did get a letter from Larry Blick, who's the chair of that commission, and you've all received copies of it tonight. We'll also, Lindsay, would you also email that out so everyone has it on their computer too?
So the dates in the letter are different than what they're actually, it says May 9th was going to be.
Yeah, that was changed after he sent that, I believe. I don't have the actual ethics report that they're presenting to the council, so I don't have that yet. I just have this letter from him and his recommendations of use of sections of the model city charter. So the other thing I wanted to mention was at our meetings when we've voted as a body to remove sections of the charter to streamline it and ask that the city council add that to the city code or procedures or policies. Mr. Allender has voiced some concerns about doing that. And I hadn't discussed it with you before, but it's my understanding that you saw Mayor Rowland at a city cleanup event, picking up trash. And they talked about it just briefly, and then the mayor decided they should meet and he could hear your concerns. And so I was also invited to that. So yesterday we had kind of a quick lunch meeting, and just wanted to make everyone aware of that. The mayor did listen to you, and no decisions were made. no promises were made, but your concerns were expressed.
I'll express them to the body.
Okay.
My concerns are that, we have the city charter.
Can you turn your mic on, please, Mr. Allender? Thank you.
We have the city charter, and as I expressed to the mayor and Jackie, I did review who worked on the last one, Bill Gunshoe, Barbara Potts, and Charlie Franklin, and I have a lot of respect for those people. They've go back to the good government league days in independence, and they know more about independence workings than I will ever know. And I believe that they set this charter up for very, very good reasons. My concern is if we leave all of these decisions to the city council, what can happen in the future? I think we've got a pretty good city council mayor now, but what are we going to have 4 years from now and 8 years from now? It'll take 4 votes to change anything. And I believe that we should have better guardrails. That's what I think, and that's what I've expressed. And I understand that I'm probably a minority of one, but I doubt that my opinion is going to change much. So there you have it.
And the only reason I even brought this up is I want to be open about any meeting that I have with any city official. So I wanted to make everyone aware of that.
So can I make a comment, Mr. Allender? I totally agree, understand. I don't know that I totally understand about the guardrails. We have to because an election can be quick and it could be a sweeping election, and sometimes we just went through it. So we should take serious caution in there, making sure we don't dump anything. That's a very good point. And I was going to say, I agree that we need to look deep as we change things. That's what I wanted to say. That makes a lot of sense. So it does make a lot of sense.
Thank you for that. At any rate, we had a nice, friendly conversation, didn't we, Jackie? Wasn't it? And that's,
Yeah.
Anyway, that was the gist of it,
Right.
basically.
Okay, are there any more announcements from any of the members?
Hockey game was great.
Hockey game was good.
Fun.
Thank the city for the tickets.
Absolutely, it was fun. It was neat as a kid. I've never been to one. That's fun.
Now, let's talk about tomorrow night's tickets.
Okay, if there aren't any more announcements, we'll go forward with our review. I'm hoping this meeting won't go too late tonight. So we're going to start with 3.25 Personnel Department. I'll just start out the discussion on that. When I was looking through the Model City Charter, I noticed that it does have a section for personnel systems. It only has 2 paragraphs. And that is Model Code Section 4.02. It's on page 31
Of the model.
of the model. Yeah.
I'm pulling it up.
Okay.
Is it 4.02 or 1?
4.02 personnel system. Yeah, that's it. I'm just wondering if maybe we could adopt something along this line, and maybe the remainder of this, the personnel department, personnel board, powers and duties, personnel rule, all through section 3.32, we could suggest to the council that they move that into the code, or personnel policies, or however they deem to handle that. And you have any comments on that?
We keep talking about the code, moving things over there.
Is there any kind of
My next number, and oh no, sorry. Is there any kind of an HR policy that some of these things should fall into versus the code or?
So the city has adopted personnel policies and procedures manual. Those have to be adopted by the city council and amended by ordinance. And prior to going to the council, those items go to the personnel board for a review and recommendation. But that is really everything you can think of personnel, accrued leave, termination, recruitment, hiring, all things personnel related fall into and are governed by the city's personnel policies. The only time that's superseded is if you're in a collective bargaining unit, your work agreement with the city would maybe have some specific items, but otherwise that is the governing body for personnel matters.
Well, does it make sense to take the things you were talking about and moving it to that? Because this is talking about the personnel system, but we could still use the model language, but a lot of the details would go in the personnel.
Personally, I think having that kind of bedrock language right there in the charter that's reflected in the model is appropriate because it reinforces the form of government, the merit-based system, and not, a patronage system. But then I agree with you, Commissioner, that the finer detail falls into that personnel policies manual.
More so than it would the code or whatever. It just seems like all the personnel HR related stuff ought to be in one place.
Right. I would agree with that.
So your collective bargaining agreement employees are cities under, okay. So those are flat out in the scope of the agreement, grievance rights, raises per contract.
Yeah, anything that would deviate from the personnel policies or where the personnel policies are silent are negotiated in those collective bargaining agreements. And then if a group is comfortable with what personnel policy says, then their work agreement's usually silent on it. And there's a section that says where the contract's silent, it shall defer to personnel policies.
So is there anything in the charter that references bargaining?
No, there is not.
Okay, collective bargaining.
Mm-hmm. Correct.
Madam, sure. My concern would be, like with many of the other things that we've dealt with moving it over to the code, not only are we putting guardrails in there, we're also putting, by leaving them there, I think we're leaving roadblocks. Some of the issues that are contained with the personnel department and personnel actions, SHRM, which is the
Society for Human Resource Management?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
It changes every year. It changes many times more often than every year. This document was written, when was it written? 1980 something? It's not up to date. And it's tying the hands of the city manager and also the council to whether to possibly contract out the whole personnel section. That's what a lot of companies are doing, a lot of organizations are doing. And right, wrong, or indifferent, we need to be looking towards the future. And as Mr. Waters, if he was here, he would say, do something bold. I think what we're trying to do is bold, so that it's as flexible as it can be and as efficient as it can be. And I think that's the direction I like to see us going. And I do. Do we need to make a motion to accept what the model unit or model city verbiage is?
Is there any more discussion about that?
The only thing that I would add is there was a comment the city manager made last week or 2 weeks ago, and you made a comment about the United States Charter being 12 pages, and we're sitting here in Independence with a 90-page.
No, that's not quite accurate.
Well, whatever. You said something close to that.
There's the Bill of Rights and there's amendments,
but
and there's
I
a
think
lot more than 12.
So much detail is in here that I do think, as long as we have it documented, in the appropriate place. We're not giving up rules or regulations. We're just using this more as an outline for reference, if for lack of a better word to say it.
I would agree.
Well, we're talking in here about merit for the personnel system for those that aren't under the collective bargaining. Does anything need to be said in here about the collective bargaining? If we're going to cover all of independence and all of the,
Well, they stay private, right, city manager? What I'm getting at is they wouldn't fall under a city 4 votes. We don't elect somebody.
but you know, he talked
I
about
mean,
how
probably you're the Teamsters, so we're got 4 votes to make a move on. That's what I'm.
well, he mentioned, you know, collective bargaining
Right.
supersedes, and nowhere in that here does it say that. And I didn't know if it needed to.
Les, the one place it might, it's not blatant, but that first sentence under B about consistent with all applicable federal and state laws,
Okay.
because of the federal and state laws around rights for collective bargaining, meet and confer, etc.
Okay.
That probably would, I would defer to the city attorney to make sure I'm not out of line, but I think that would probably loop in enough of a reference to the collective bargaining and meet and confer process to ensure that that continues to be reflected in our charter.
I would agree with that.
Okay, I just want to make sure we've got it in there somewhere so that if there's any question about it, we can refer back to it.
I have a question too, though. If we adopt paragraphs A and B, which I don't have an issue with that, but it would eliminate section 3.25, which discusses a personnel department. And of course, we would be eliminating that, and I guess we would also be eliminating section 3.26 regarding the duties of the personnel director. But then we get down to this personnel board in section 3.27. And the question in my mind is, what do we do with them? Is that something that's still relevant and important?
So this would be similar to the other departments that we looked at 2 weeks ago, where personnel/human resources department is referenced in the code. And I know your position on that, John, but just it's consistent with the other departments that are listed in code, and then would not be.
I've got that.
There you go.
I was talking about this personnel board that's provided in section 3.27. And of course, it says that that'll be 5 members of the personnel department. And if there's no personnel department, what do you do about that?
Have we got to that part yet, Madam Chair?
I'd like to discuss it. Yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead. Is the personnel board part of the city code of ordinances currently?
It is. It falls into the same portion of the city code where these departments are. Of course, the language is much more sparse. There's a creation of a personnel board, and it says the powers and duties shall have the powers and duties prescribed by section 3.29, which of course jumps ahead a little bit. But those are the 2 references to it in city code.
But does it say in the city code that the personnel department, the personnel board are appointees from the personnel department? What does it say?
No, it just says that it's the personnel board is created, the members of which shall be appointed by the council as provided by city charter section 3.27.
Okay.
And then the next section is saying that it shall have the powers and duties prescribed by 3.29.
I want to clarify that while it says in section 3.27, there shall be, I agree, it says there shall be a personnel board within the personnel department. the personnel board is it's a 5-member board appointed by the council. I mean, it doesn't with separate, they're not city employees. They're members of the community just like you all. It is, that board has a staff liaison from the personnel or HR department, but it doesn't report to the personnel department. It's a standalone body who makes recommendations directly to the council. So I think it's a little unclear or certainly not quite accurate to say the personnel board is within the personnel department, because again they're not appointed by anyone in the personnel department. They don't report to them. So you could if you followed what you've done before in terms of removing the individual departments from the charter, I don't see that necessarily you would have to follow and also remove the personnel board. Obviously, there would need to be some tweaking there, but if the consensus is that the personnel board itself, which is a separate body and serves specific functions, should remain, that in my opinion could happen and would make sense independent of whether or not there is a personnel department specifically stated in the charter.
Did I hear you say that the personnel board the members aren't appointed by the council from the personnel department?
They are appointed by the council. They are not from the personnel department.
Okay.
I can't tell you right off the bat who the members of the personnel board are.
I know there's a vacancy right now. Unfortunately, the chair passed recently, but the rest of them are just lay people. I don't think there's any specific, calling for somebody with a background in this, that, or the other. They're just lay citizens.
All right. So basically saying the language is 3.27. If that's what's happening, this should be tweaked anyway.
I would agree. I actually think it's a little misleading the way it is now, because it implies that the personnel board the personnel department somehow has control over the personnel board, and is, as you point, it's even staffed and made up of members from the personnel department, and that's not the case at all. Yeah, I agree, and I really hadn't until now read that piece that close, but that hasn't been the practice, and I don't believe was ever the intent of that it be a board, an internal board. It's supposed to be sort of a checks and balances. As Mr. Walker said, it would typically be the personnel department, along with the city manager's office, that would be bringing changes like to the policies and procedures manual, and that flows through the personnel board for review and a recommendation before it goes to the council. So it wouldn't make sense if that was just an internal group that, made up of other city employees who worked for the personnel department and the city manager, if that was the intent. So I think that should be tweaked regardless of what you do with the personnel department.
Well, that makes a lot of difference to me, but what I would agree to do about 3.25 and 3.26.
Sure.
So, okay, that helps.
Thank you. Yeah.
Are you wanting 3.27 left in the charter, the personnel board in the charter?
I think that's one of those guardrails that I'm talking about. I think there should be some input from others. If these are not employees of the city that's on this personnel board. Okay.
I believe that I know at least I believe the chair, the former chair who recently passed away, was a retiree, is my understanding. But has only been on since as a retiree. It has no active current city employees on it. I can't say I don't staff that board, so I can't say exactly who's on it, but there are no city employees on that board.
Okay. All right.
Would you want to just leave a kind of minimal section in the charter that there shall be a personnel board
I
appointed by the council?
Well, You know, we haven't got to 329, and I understand. I believe I read a memo by Mr. Walker some time ago that you thought there was a conflict in the language of, I think, paragraph 3.
In 329, where it talks about powers and duties, there's some misinterpretation at times about the role this group plays. Are they a final arbiter, or are they advisory to the council through the city manager? So I think adding some kind of language that just clarifies that role would be helpful, so that there's no misunderstanding of the function there to play. And I think we owe it to those citizens who volunteer on that to clarify, so they understand what they're being asked to do.
Okay.
And do we think that should be in the charter?
Do we have any boards or commissions that are not advisory, that actually have a power?
The planning commission is a little unique because its basis comes from the state constitution, so it does have some responsibility and authority. Though, I mean, there are some items that they are the final determinant on. The council doesn't see, like, for example, short-term rental applications. If you want to rent your home out, that is the
But doesn't it still go from the planning commission's recommendations to the council for them to make the final decision?
not on that
everything?
particular item.
Oh, okay.
Right. Now, most of the other things like rezoning applications, things of that nature, do go on to the council for a final. Everything else that you were thinking of is an advisory board to the council.
Well, the Board of Adjustment would be.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Yeah,
Yep.
the Board of Adjustment would be the only exception,
Yeah.
and that's because it's a quasi judicial body. So if they are the final say at the city level, and then if there's any appeal from there from the Board of Adjustment, it goes to circuit court. It never goes to the city council. But generally, with the exception of that, the rest of the bodies are going to be recommending bodies.
Okay, thanks.
I would just also comment about when you have these strict requirements for members of boards and commissions, which there are a few in this. You can't belong to a political party and all this language. It becomes hard to fill those positions when they come open sometimes.
You can't belong to what?
Where did I see that? Can't be,
You can't be a candidate for any of the public office or positions. You can't be a member of any local, state, or national committee or a political party.
yeah. Yeah, I think, I don't really even know what that means, but like I said, it becomes hard sometimes when you've got these restrictions on members to find, to get good applicants. So I would definitely think that needs to come out of the charter for the council to make its own decision on membership.
On 3.28?
2.9 and 2.8, yeah.
I'd make a motion to.
Well, before you make that motion,
No, we need to react.
talk about
We need to
3.27.
cross out part of that crap. That stuff, I apologize. That stuff.
Any more discussion about that?
Excuse me about that.
About the qualifications, the powers that are so detailed in the charter?
Provision of 3.28.
2.8 and 2.9.
Well, I kind of agree with you regarding section 3.28. I mean, other than saying that they should be in sympathy with the merit principles, and okay, the rest of that to me can go. As far as 3.29, I think we should have somehow described what the powers of this board would be and what the purpose is.
Do you think we could shorten it somewhat?
I'm sorry.
You think we could shorten it
Sure.
to make it more broadly?
What
Worded?
part is it, Mr. Walker?
We're talking about 3.29 now.
kind of problematic.
Yeah, on 329.
The
So 328, I would make, if you're make a motion to delete that, because it's restrictive of who can be on certain commissions and help in voluntary spots now.
And I'm assuming the city already has some board and commission standard requirements.
So when I looked at it, there are certain, you can't be a city employee.
Like a
on it.
resident
Yeah,
of the city, or
That's right. You
I
have to
think
be a
there's some
resident
that
of the
allow
city, is that right?
businesses, people who have businesses in the city. I'm just generally
well,
membership of,
Bruce, I was just suggesting that it said every member of the personnel board shall be known to be in sympathy with the merit principle as applied to the civil service. That seems to be, innocuous. Then,
Yes.
and of course, you wouldn't want somebody on the board that's not sympathetic to the merit system.
I mean, you get kind of detailed. That last stuff after that last semicolon, I don't quite know how that all fits. Provided that a member may or a member be in the National Guard, naval, I don't quite understand how that
I
follows. the rest of it.
agree with you.
It's like they just had a sentence left over. They started.
I think the first sentence gets it done. So
Yeah, I agree.
and how do they determine if someone has sympathy?
backing up to 3.27, I think there shall be a personnel board, and it says within the personnel department. That needs to be taken out, obviously.
Yeah, I'm not sure how you show sympathy or sympathize, like your question about that. It's
So that might that mean where you're leaning, like you're could be swayed by one, like you're on this committee to make a certain move for a certain client, or kind of like it's in the national news. This is an example. It's with the Clarence Thomas, and magically he's getting some cases from somebody that donated a bunch of stuff to him. Or that's what I think that means, is to try to guide that, so you don't get somebody on the commission that's working on whether you get a liquor license and my buddy wants to buy it. But that's what I take that as.
Is that part of the application form? How do you,
So if you had a commission that dealt with liquor, that's what I mean. You know what I mean? The liquor licenses and stuff, and
What I'm
you'd be able to sway
speculating,
things.
sorry, sir.
I'm sorry.
What I'm speculating on is that at the time this charter was originally written, you're coming out of an era where you've had a mayor who's been mayor for 30 years and has been, getting friends and relatives and family members work within the city. My speculation is when they say sympathetic to merit principle, that means somebody who is committed to hiring people based on merit, their knowledge, skills, and abilities, and not putting people on the personnel board who would say, oh, that's hogwash. I'm totally fine if we hire our cousins, brothers, uncles, whatever it might be. That was probably important in that era time frame that they're coming out of.
understand the merit principle.
That-
or
Probably
something
clearer
like
language. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'll just throw this out as an option. If I can understand what the consensus is with regards to sections 3.25 through 3.32, so everything under personnel department, then if I can get a consensus for what I think you all want, then I can and make some revisions to that outside of the meeting and include those with the packet next time. If you all are wanting to, I know there's a lot of pieces there that sort of hook together, And so if I can get a consensus, then I can propose some language and include that with your packet next time. If you want to move on, if you want to see if I can get that consensus and then move on to another section. Obviously, if you all want to, hash it out, that's certainly your prerogative. I'm just giving you another option.
I appreciate that offer, and I think that's a good idea.
I do too.
Yeah, I think so.
I'm good.
Okay.
So, okay, so just to make sure I do have a general understanding is the thought process that while the personnel department itself would come out as you all have done with other departments. I know this may not be 100%. I'm just trying to get a consensus that the personnel board would stay in with appropriate functions, but not necessarily all of the qualifications and restrictions that are currently there.
Right, and you're also addressing Mr. Walker's issues regarding some language in 3.29 subsection 3. Because I read that and it doesn't really make much sense to me
Sure.
either.
Yeah, so we can play around with that and try to come up with something that, again, we think you all will at least give you a starting point next time, so we're not trying to take it word for it, because there's a lot of language there, and we'll send that to you with your packet so you have it in advance, and that way, by the time when you come to your meeting, your next meeting, you've had time to sort of review and digest it and can discuss there, if you all want to do that. Yes, sir.
I think I suggest that it's a suggestion that you address 330, 331, 332 at the same time.
Yes, sir. I would address everything through 333.32.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So, when we had the discussion about the model, are we past that? Is that part of this whole thing?
I think,
Is that
Mr. Coburn, you're
encased in
gonna,
here? Because we had somebody who's going to make a motion to the 4.01 part of the model charter.
I think we'll let Mr. Cover see what he does first with his recommendation.
Is that what we went over? Does that fit in this? What you're saying?
Yes, I believe that fits into this as well.
okay, thank you. All right, moving on, we'll come back to that. Department of Finance, 3.33. This is another one that I would probably recommend this come out of the charter and move to the code or policy or, we've already kind of covered that in that section we added about the city manager's authority. But I'm certainly open to discussion, and I guess I would start off by the question to city staff is it current? Is there still a Department of Finance? And
There is still a Department of Finance, the director of which is the Director of Finance.
okay.
Who is it?
A woman named Cindy Gray.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And this is another one that's
1985.
This is another one that's very long and detailed that I believe belongs in the city code of ordinances.
Yeah, I agree. You get into some of that purchasing agent, that's literally a job description.
The model charter recommend or have any language on Department of Finance that would help simplify it?
What page are you on?
I didn't have the model charter. It's in a different vehicle, but I was curious if the model charter had more simplistic language on the Department of Finance.
Well, they have a section, it's under Article 5, Financial Management. I think that's about as close as I've seen.
Yeah. Section 5, Article 5.
Yeah.
I think some of that is already covered under the city manager duties, correct?
A lot of the responsibility for preparing the annual budget, keeping the council apprised of the status of the financial position of the city. Yeah, that was all back in the section that we looked at on city manager. A lot of the things you're seeing here as well are now covered by GFOA, Government Finance Officers of America Association, whatever they are, and then GASB, which was kind of a listing of financial practice best standards, rules actually about how you're to do your yeah. So a lot of that is redundant here in the charter with what any finance director worth their chops is going to have to follow anyway.
Right. Also I noticed that
I would also say that what is in here, our current charter, is probably not applicable for the current regulations under the governmental accreditation.
I would agree.
okay, is there any discussion about my recommendation that this come out?
I would agree that it comes out as it's covered in several different areas, and then it's the city manager's job to be correct to say staff that.
Mr. Walker, is there a division of purchases?
There is a division of we call it purchasing. Yep.
Okay, and do you see any reason why that needs to stay in the charter?
Well, again, I think this is an industry. If it's not an industry requirement, it's certainly an industry best practice at this point in time.
Mm-hmm. Any more discussion on that section?
I guess I should add too, for the committee's benefit, the council has adopted, this was maybe 3 or 4 years ago, a procurement policy, and that's been updated several times since then. So that's got rules and regulations about how and when we have to take things to bid, how we're to evaluate those, et cetera.
Yeah, I noticed some sections on, I think it was 3.34 about assessment of property. I can't imagine the director of finance doing that for taxation purposes. It seems like it's maybe.
Yeah, we receive our numbers from the county assessor's office. And
Yeah, there's no
we're not
assessing
calculating that,
any.
right?
Yeah, I didn't
That's a
think
function
so.
of the
But
county.
So I think that this is definitely outdated.
And number 2 talks about assess them or use what the county assessor provides. So that's kind of covered by what you were saying.
Okay.
It may need to be streamlined, the wording.
Yeah.
Item 2 there talks about assess all taxable property within the city unless the city uses the assessments by the county assessor.
Do I have a motion on that?
I make a motion to remove the Department of Finance out of the charter.
So that's section 3.33 through 3.35.
Yes.
Second.
So I have motion and a second, and as part of that motion that we recommend that city council
Most of it's covered in there already in the
make sure
council.
it's, okay, that it would be covered in either the code of ordinances, policies, procedures. And we have a second. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? That passes. So we're done with Article 3, except for the sections we're coming back to. The next article is municipal court. Of course, I have some comments on that. I'll find them. So I think Mr. Walker touched on this in his message to us, or his memo to us, but in the past several years, a lot of cities in Missouri have disbanded their own municipal court, and those cases now go to the circuit court. Part of that is because of the cost of a court and a prosecutor, and the limit on fines that can be collected by the state. So I just want to throw that out and discuss maybe taking this out of the charter, that it's required that there be a municipal court. Any discussion on that?
I'm not very familiar with this, but what actually goes to municipal court other than traffic violations and citations from police officers?
Yes, city police officers, some code violations, correct? Some
Correct.
nuisance type violations would go to municipal court.
And to be clear, so to make revisions here would create flexibility with how the city has a municipal court. It wouldn't be the fact that the city wouldn't be issuing citations anymore and wouldn't have the, I mean, I wish that was the case, that all those things just magically went away. But what the difference here is, just so everyone's on the same page, is what we call in-house municipal courts, which is what Independence has, Blue Springs has. It used to be that most cities had in-house municipal courts that they operated themselves, with a judge appointed by the mayor or council or board of aldermen, and they had a court clerk, and that was all done in-house. Since starting in 2015 and 2016 with municipal court reform, it has become much more expensive to operate independent municipal courts, and there have also been caps placed on the revenue that cities are able to collect. And so what has happened is there has been more, so over the past 7-8 years, and this happened to some extent before, but it's happened with greater frequency, that cities have, instead of having their in-house independent municipal courts, which, to be clear, are still under the circuit court, they're a division. It's the Independence Municipal Court division within Jackson County. But what some cities have opted to do is to transfer those cases over to its associate circuit court, where they are heard there by an associate circuit judge sitting as a municipal judge. The city would still have its own prosecutor, because that's separate from the court function. But it has, but the idea is that rather than having an in-house independent municipal court, some cities have opted to utilize the circuit courts to perform that function. And obviously you no longer have that staff. You also don't have the control that cities, you have when you run it yourself. The cities still retain the fine revenue that comes in from those, but court costs then go to the court. So that's, currently if you have a speeding ticket and you plead guilty, a portion of what you're paying is a fine, and a portion of what you're paying is court costs. Well, currently the city keeps all of that. If a city outsources their municipal court to the circuit court, then the city, as they process citations, they send that fine revenue back to cities, but they keep the court costs because, again, they're running the court now. And so it's just a different way of processing municipal court citations.
And Madam Chair, if I could add just a little color to that of what we're facing. So today in municipal court, they have 2 vacancies. I think they have 7 full-time employees budgeted for. Those positions' salary is less than what you could make working at a fast food restaurant or as a lifeguard. So drumming up interest is hard, but anybody who's been watching our presentations knows the city is very financially constrained. So this is competing for resources along with everything else. You've all probably read about the challenge with Jackson County and Kansas City, Missouri, and building a new jail. They were together in a regional jail. Now Jackson County is supposedly building their own jail, and Kansas City, Missouri is out there on the open market. They have greater spending power than we do. So the cost, the daily prisoner housing cost is skyrocketing, and it's becoming a situation of bed space is going to the highest visitor. So our judge is constrained. He has to kind of look at the budget and decide, am I going to send this person, sentence them to some time in jail at one of the, because Independence, we can only hold prisoners for a period of time at our detention facility. Then we have to send them to Johnson County, Missouri, Andrew County, Buchanan County, somewhere like that every day. And if the budget is not there, then they're challenged in that. And then I'm not quite sure, I'm way out over my skis on this, but in visiting with the judge, they are seeing a greater volume of felony drug cases in municipal court, which is absolutely clogging up their docket down there as well. So the situation I'm most familiar with is Platte City, Missouri, where they finally threw up their hands and said, the cost of doing this combined with the limited ability to provide the service is not worth us trying to do this anymore. And it's now in Platte County Circuit Court, as Jeremy laid out for you.
Well, within this municipal court, near and dear to my heart, I had a soft spot for it. And I would hate to see it go. They've had the problems with housing prisoners for years. That's nothing new. They had that problem in Kansas City. They have in Jackson County. They have everywhere. I have not known, I don't know, maybe Mr. Culver can enlighten me, but I don't know of any municipality the size of Independence that have sent their business to the circuit court. I know Tapawingo has, but that's a small municipality. I know that John Bragg, the prosecutor, and as far as I know, John's still going to circuit court. And of course, the Platte City is not that big a jurisdiction either. And maybe there's probably some others that I don't know whether Winnebago down in Cache County has done that or not.
Winnebago still has an independent in-house municipal court.
Right.
To answer your question, thinking down the list of the largest cities in the state, that put larger ones in Independence. No, I don't believe any of them that are certainly not larger than Independence have outsourced their municipal court like is being discussed.
I would hate to do that. I like to talk to Gary and Susie and Mitch and kind of get their take on it. If it's just economically we can't do it, well, okay. But if it's still workable, we can have a municipal court in the city of Independence. I think we ought to have one.
Well, I don't think this body is not making any recommendation on keeping municipal court or not keeping a municipal court.
Well, but we're saying if we take it out of here, then we're going to leave the decision to the city council. And I'm not, at this point, I'm just saying, I admit, I've got a soft spot for the municipal court. I would hate to see that happen. I know as far as the revenue, Mr. Walker, in my experience, the municipal court paid for all the employees and turned over revenue to the city. Is that still the case?
That is not. The change in state statute in 2015 with Senate Bill 5 has severely limited our ability to issue citations and has put a cap on the maximum amount that the judge can issue, which was I don't want to give you a percent because I can't remember offhand, but it was a significant reduction in revenue that we're able to assess.
So, maybe you answered my question, maybe I just didn't get it, but is it a break even?
No, we're subsidizing that operation right now.
And I probably got just another question.
Yeah.
Has there been any analysis or studies about what benefits it would have to send the business to substitute certain dirt? You would have to have at least one full-time judge to hear it all. So,
We've not done any analysis because the charter says we have to have it, so it's not been worth doing any kind of research.
okay, well,
On that.
okay. All right. So we don't know.
No, sir.
Madam Chairman.
But we do know it is costing us like flipped upside down in a car.
That's correct. It's subsidized by the general fund.
What's concerning for me is that we're now talking about a court system where we're concerned about the cost rather than the outcome. Are we reducing crime? Are we reducing the violations? Are we able to hold folks accountable for what they've been charged? Or if it's too expensive to send them away, we let them go out. I think that option needs to be there. I'm not advocating to get rid of any department, but that analysis and that ability to make adjustments is exactly what we're trying to do. And under our structure, it should be the city manager and the city council, whoever that may be at that time, should be making that determination. For us to say, well, we can't get rid of the municipal court because it's in the charter, but we're losing our rear end and we're also making bad decisions. I mean,
And we have to cut from somewhere.
yes. And I don't know that the county can be financially successful doing it either. But I know our situation is we need to find what the best practice is. And so when that best practice is determined, whether what the history was, the city manager and the council needs to make a determination, just like what they're determining to do with other departments. Shouldn't be any different.
Well, I may at some point agree with you. I said I may at some point agree with you. I'd like to have a little bit more information myself. But what you just said about people not going to jail, that's been around. I've been a lawyer for 40 some odd years. They let people go all the time because there's not jail space. And of course, what Mr. Walker said about getting felony drug charges in the City of Independence, they don't handle felony cases. If it's a misdemeanor, it will come to Independence. Felony, that goes to the county.
Just to clarify what Mr. Walker was referring to, you're correct, Mr. Allender. Certainly, felony charges and technically misdemeanor charges are not handled in municipal court. What Mr. Walker is referring to is there has been a significant increase in the level of serious drug charges that are now that aren't being prosecuted at the state level. And so because of decisions within the Jackson County Prosecutor's Office. So those charges that previously would have been felony charges are now being processed through municipal court. They are
as misdemeanor.
As ordinance violations. Yes, sir. As ordinance violations, because that's the most we can do. So and certainly, I guess to clarify, Mr. Langford, who was filled in for me a couple times, is the full-time in-house city prosecutor. And certainly better equipped to answer specific questions. But yes, there has been a significant increase in drug charges, especially that previously would have gone to state to the state prosecutor's office to go through state court. Those aren't being prosecuted there, and so they're instead being funneled through as ordinance violation through municipal court.
Is there any more discussion on municipal court?
I would, light of that, the information, the clog side and the levels of it, and certainly make a motion to strike it from the charter where they have to have it. And I don't think they have the ability or really the asset or just to do the research, because if we vote to take it out of the charter, doesn't mean the municipal court is going away.
It does not.
It would mean that you don't have to have it, and if it's saving money, they should be able to make a decision on the council. I'd make a motion to remove it from the charter at the level of what we're doing here in these last 10 meetings and furthermore, more meetings on. But that certainly is a lot.
Well, Bruce, let me say one more thing.
Your microphone on?
Yeah, I think so. Maybe I'm
My
too far
hearing is
away from
horrible.
it. Let's say one more thing. I mean, you can humor me or not, but I would like some more time to think about this. And one of the issues too is, there's a provision in section 4.1 about a judicial commission nominating or giving to the mayor names of people to be appointed as judges. And I was on that commission. That's a very important role.
Yeah.
And then, as long as there is a municipal court of some fashion, regardless of whether it's in the charter or not, there should be that commission that submits names to the mayor for the appointment of a judge.
I would say that would give them the opportunity to open an envelope of, do we want a portion of a municipal?
I'm sorry?
That would give them the opportunity to do a study, research whether there is a portion of the municipal courts we need. Is there levels of it you can farm out rather than require, what we're hearing, and if you read through the description, I think that if we took it out of the charter, they would have a lot more ability to decide if we need a portion of the municipal courts or the entire thing be farmed out. I get what you're saying about the mayor. It is very, very important that you don't take the eye off the ball, that if you do some stuff around here, nothing bad's going to happen to the criminals. I don't like that at all. I don't like to open that door under any circumstances. We certainly need some provisions, but I don't think we should hand tie it where it can't be. Take the time to study it, decide what sections need to be mandatory in the city.
Well, all right, but you're saying we're going to take it out of the charter, leave it to city council, but is the city council going to provide for a judicial commission?
That's what I was going to ask. Is that currently in the city code, the judicial commission?
We'll check. Mr. Walker, does the court fall underneath your direction?
No, it falls underneath, John, help me out. It reports up to the circuit court judge, yeah.
Well, it's really under the supervision, at least the prosecutor's under supervision, Mr. Coe, right?
The prosecutor is, but that's,
Exactly.
yes.
But the judges are independent.
The judges are independent. It's and are appointed by the mayor and council, but again, it's a division of the Jackson County Circuit Court. So, I mean, ultimately, if they report up, through to the presiding judge of Jackson County, the 16th Circuit. But there's two municipal judges that are appointed by the mayor and council.
I totally recognize the levels. I have never discounted that part of it. That it's not just the mayor or the council picks. I don't take it light. I don't think it's not taken lightly at all. I think that I understand the levels it would be to the circuit court, and I was going to make sure understand that I know that it would be the presiding judge of Jackson County, basically a supervision of the municipal courts. It's not just that. So yeah, I certainly didn't make any motion thinking it was just the municipal court right here in this district. There has to be somebody supervised.
I truly think it's probably one I differ on, but I think this needs to stay in the charter. There's not a good answer on money situation, how the money is, but I see if this goes to Jackson County, it'll barely be messed up. Just me.
Here, here.
I hate to see this come out of the charter.
Well, and Mr. Casey, I'm with you, but I also hear what Bruce is saying, and I hear what Jackie's saying, and I agree that we have to have some flexibility. I mean, it may become a point where it's just not economically feasible continue with the municipal court as described here. But then but I would not want to see this go to Jackson County either, and you said it probably better than I could. But the other issues there are these protections in here regarding the appointment of judges, which I think are very important. And there's also issues about the discharge of a judge, which I think are important. We don't want the judges to be political footballs.
Right.
And that's the purpose of all of this. And, I know these judges, the current judges, very well, known for years and years and years, and they are the best that we've had for a long time. I've been through the period where we had some stinkers. So
I too don't discount any of that you're saying.
yeah,
The issue that I have is that the option needs to be there for the city manager and the city council to make some tough decisions if they need to for economic purposes, and or if they get to the point where we can't handle the volume of the crimes that we're having to go through the municipal court, city manager needs to have the ability to make tough decisions. And this year alone, how short are you on your budget this year?
We were about $500,000 short just to start, and got another $1 million of spending requests from the department, so $1.5 million.
Those are kind of big numbers for me. And at some point, we need to be looking at internal rather than trying to scrape together a way to make it through another year without having some kind of tax increases or things like that.
Totally agree. Those don't just fly. They're not easy. And so once we complete this charter, say we're in a big worse condition, and it's a mandatory it stays in here, you're cutting somewhere. Not from the court, but maybe from the police department that has to go chase the criminals to maintain a $8 or $9 or $10 or $11. I'm not talking making by any stretch, but he's saying they're not allowed to pay very much for the people to work in the court. 4 or 5 openings is kind of a lot. The reason I think it should come out of the charter, and I'm going to stand by it, is if they have to start making cuts to other things to maintain it, you have to look at how that's going to pay off for the people that are the crime, the side of the crime. Everybody's not the criminal. Everybody's not guilty. But, we had a hell of a time, hard time getting caught up in the police department and its own self. It's my understanding and observation there's tremendous amount of openings in the dispatch department for 911. So if you're burning off cash to make a function that could partially go somewhere else, or even create the study to find out if in its totality it's worth staying. I totally get that. But I disagree with Commissioner Casey that it has to be in here. I think it should be looked at outside. So if it turns out in 6, 8, 12 months down the road, do we have a whole other commission come back together to change Article 4? If it's a mandatory, it's in there. That's exactly where I'm at with it, is it has to come out in a year or two, or a worse recession, things like that happen. You're there. Is it going to be another 35 or 45 years before you can kind of open and look at it? That's why my position is a little bit more flexibility, not any other than that.
Well, is there any way we could add wording to this section
In the code.
or in the code or something to make those tough financial decisions?
Yeah.
It's in here that says we have to have it. Maybe we word it somehow that, depending on the financial situation of the city and the financials of this, the decision's made to put it back in the council and the city manager's hands to address that when they're looking at cuts to the budget or whatever it is.
Is any of this addressed in the code of ordinances?
It's pretty extensive.
What about the appointment of judges?
So the Judicial Commission is referenced in here in the code, Article 17, and then Article 22 has. Give me just a minute here. 22 different sections in it, including selection of judges.
And getting bigger.
Well, what, buddy?
And getting bigger.
I'm with you. I mean, I believe we give the city some flexibility. I agree, but and maybe there's going to have to be a decision down the road to move it to the circuit court. But until then, we need to have the Judicial Commission, and we need to have these other things that are set out. Is that possible, Mr. Coburn? You're better at this than I am.
Well, yeah, I mean, yes, certainly that's possible. So, if that's again the consensus, I'm happy to play around with that and see what we come up with. That essentially,
Could you look at 5 through 14?
So just so I want to make sure I am understanding the consensus. It sounds at least or a chunk is that this section, this article addressing municipal court, would stay in the charter to some extent, but still give some flexibility, given the reality that it could be at some point in time to allow the city manager and the council to potentially make some adjustments and make some decisions. Is that correct?
That would be, yeah,
I got Brother Nick agreeing, so I'm with him.
Could I ask a quick question?
Yes, sir.
If they were to do away with our municipal court, if someone was being held over, would that go to the new jail rather than us contracting out somebody that goes to Centerview every day?
So I'm going to say I don't know, and maybe Mr. Walker does. In my experience, and the last city that I've been involved who went through this process and ultimately made the decision to outsource theirs was Sedalia. And they had an in-house independent municipal court and transferred it over. So, one of the easy things and that works there, so this doesn't work in most situations, is that the city and the county have an agreement where the city essentially has unlimited jail stays because of a previous deal. And so it is an associate circuit court. It's heard an associate circuit judge, a city as municipal judge who hears those cases, and they are held, at as far as I know, within the county there, and the city doesn't pay it because again of a previous arrangement. Normally, the city, for instance, in Grain Valley, if anyone's incarcerated there, I can't remember now where they go, but the city foots that bill. So it would be my expectation that on city charges, to the extent the judge in circuit court or associate circuit court opted to incarcerate anyone, that wherever that was, however they did that, the city is going to end up footing that bill because those are city charges. So, Mr. Walker, do you have anything to add to that?
Oh, heavens, no.
So, one way or another, whether it's one way or another, the city would be paying for those incarceration costs.
Jackson County's not going to do it. You know that.
yeah.
They've got their hands full. They're not going to want some more.
I understand, right? And I'm not going to speculate as to what an associate circuit judge would or wouldn't do in those situations. But to the extent anyone was ordered was to serve jail time on municipal cases, however, I don't know what that arrangement would look like. But if that happened, then I would certainly expect that the city is going to be paying that bill.
The way the charter is written right now, those discussions would never take place. Because they're mandating that there's a municipal court, right?
No, the municipal court is a division of the circuit court.
We would still not be having we wouldn't be having discussions on where we would be housing incarcerated folks and those type of things. If we were to do away with the municipal court, that's the circuit court would be making the determination associate to.
No, they're going to be applying municipal, our city law, city.
Okay.
And again, as Mr. Comer said, if they need to be incarcerated, that's going to be the city's problem. It's not going to be the state's problem.
We just wouldn't have any of the costs associated with the administrative or the judges.
Well, sure there are. I mean, that's why Mr. Comer suggests that the state would be able to keep all the costs. Now, I don't know, the city of Independence has fairly minimal court costs.
Mhm.
And of course, if you had the same citation in state court, you're talking about at least 3 times as much, sometimes probably 4 or 5 times as much. And I don't know whether the state costs are assessed to a municipal case or whether the city's costs are assessed. I don't know.
It's the city's costs that are assessed because by statute, as this, it's statutorily set what court costs can be applied, and for cities they can opt into certain ones, but it would be city court costs, and those can be changed. But it is not there. There are higher costs associated with state cases, so it is so to the extent you have municipal cases being heard in circuit court, the circuit court makes less money for, if they had 2 cases, equal cases, one was a municipal court case and one is a state case, the court costs are probably, as Mr. Allender said, going to be half as much, if not less, on a municipal court case as they would be on a state case. And so, but whatever court costs there are, they keep those because they're the ones who are running the administrative portion of the court, and that's what the court costs are for. So that is the function the city's giving up is everything is the administrative portion being essentially the municipal judges and the court clerks, right? That's what the city is giving up in terms of a role, and in exchange, they're giving up the court costs associated with that. And so, if the circuit court is serving that function, then it's reasonable that they're also then are going to be keeping those court costs because that's what the court costs are for. But in terms of incarceration, the city's going to be on the hook for that no matter what. They are city charges, whether they're heard in municipal court in-house as it is now, or some other, or associate circuit court later. The city is always going to be on the hook because the alternative would be that essentially the county would absorb that, and I absolutely can't see that happening.
And do they go to the county jail or?
I'm going to defer to Mr. Walker on that.
I was going to ask real quick, it might answer the question too, isn't the detainable or prisoner capacity about 25 at the city jail? And I know that's a little different, depends on, is it 25?
I'll be honest, I don't know the ins and outs of all
Maybe
this.
it's not that much even.
My recommendation here and the color commentary that I gave was only to illustrate for you that the municipal court is something that's required to be, my reading of the charter, maybe we need a legal opinion, but the word shall seems pretty powerful to me, and was advocating that perhaps you give future managers and councils the flexibility to innovate and look for different ways to provide the service. I don't have the ins and out details, and I am not advocating that we get rid of the municipal court or, that I'm a giant cheapskate and want to cut everything. I was just pointing out that there is not an ability to have a thoughtful, innovative conversation here if one was even wanted to be had because of that word shall.
I would like to see Mr. Jeremy, who just as he asked, and keep it in the charter, but come back and word in the event that we need to go outside for other services or something like that. But since you have all the spare time, it sounds like.
I have help.
We had a motion originally on the floor from Ms. Frakes that never got a second.
Okay.
I'll second it. To
And
remove
that motion, your motion was to remove Article 4 from the charter. Do you want to keep that motion? Or withdraw it? Or further
Well,
come back to it?
yeah, I mean, I do think it is absolutely, because this has been a good, I think that's what this committee is designed for, this commission. And I think that with the counselors, maybe some guidance, a little bit more flexibility, a word may rather than shall, and some things like that may be way better after listening to Commissioner Allender, and I think all of us put some stuff in there that's right. I mean, I do. I think that it has to be looked at, and it's, a different city manager, a different council 10 years down the road certainly may be totally out of it. So maybe a little guidance on some wording that would give us flexibility. Counselor, I think at consensus, I would withdraw my motion with the fact that we're going to do a little bit more work on the better wording, I would say.
Okay, you're taking on a lot.
I was going to say that.
We need to give you some extra time to work on that.
Yeah. We're the 18th. When's our next meeting?
May 2nd.
May 2nd. When would you normally send the packet out?
What's the week before?
The end of,
The 26th, 7th.
so like a week from.
Yeah.
I'll be retired if I have more time to look at it.
By the end of next week. Yeah. Yeah, we can make that happen.
You can.
Okay. I may send you an email on it because as I was going through it, I had some questions that I'm not going to bring up tonight. Just,
Please, yeah.
okay.
Got so close.
Okay.
But yet so far. Yep.
Well, any other discussion on that? Mr. Cover has very generously offered to do some rewriting for us. I appreciate that.
Very much. So is that the entire Article 4, Madam
That's
Chair?
it. That's Article 4, municipal court.
So we're going to check with that May 2nd.
And what did the city, was there something in the city model, the model city?
I was looking and didn't have time to find it. I didn't see it. I
Yeah,
will say
I very likely missed it.
Blue Springs Charter only deals with appointment of municipal judges, does not have municipal court in it at all. Lee Summit Charter does have a municipal court article. That's pretty long. So, yeah.
Well, I know some history of municipal court, and I know some of the reasons probably the people that put together the last charter had this language in there. And it's there for a reason, because we had some problems in the courts in Independence. And it's there for a reason. That's one of the reasons that Chuck Sandage was appointed prosecutor back in 1969. So, just saying.
Okay, if there's no more discussion, that's the end of our charter review tonight. Is there any other business? Our next meeting, Lindsay?
May 2nd.
So in May, we have May 2nd, May 16. May has 5 Tuesdays. Thank you for letting me know about that. So we'll have a little extra time between meetings at the end of May. And
Here, or we want at City Hall again.
here?
I like
Yeah,
the
here.
That's up to you all.
City Hall, it's either way.
It's subject to scheduling, so that's up to you.
I'd like to hear what you.
Okay.
I like those chairs.
Yeah.
Trust me, after being up there for a planning commission, sometimes those chairs don't even help.
So for our next meeting, we'll come back to those sections that we've postponed and Mr. Cover's gonna be assisting us on. And hopefully we're gonna jump over Article 5 for now. So if we want to get started on Article 6, you might want to prepare for that. Okay, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor of adjournment, say aye. Aye. Opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you.
You had to look out.
Step back to mine.
I'm gonna look at next time.
You had to put out as much
We need, I think I made a couple of changes to the wording, give this flexibility. Because I don't see it as a finance department.